Hello and welcome to my channel, and this is your first time here. My name is Millie and I do this series on my channel called Multichrome Monday where I feature different multichromes. I also compare them between different brands, mostly indie brands, and I do eye swatches as well as some tips and tricks on how to use multichromes. So today's video will be all about the Natasha Denona Triochrome palette. You can see even the packaging is supposed to be kind of chrome-like, and I do have already done a video with this palette. I did 2 looks, I did live swatches, I did live swatch comparisons with some of my other multichromes, so I will make sure to link that down below if you would like to see some swatches. I will not be doing swatches in this video. You can refer to the other one. I will be inserting, however, some comparison swatches into this video as well, because in the last video I just compared a bunch of shades, so I think now I've narrowed it down more to have a better idea on which ones are the most similar to the 3 multichromes that are in this palette. So just in case you haven't seen this palette, this is what it looks like on the inside. It has 3 multichromes going down in the center, and then the rest are matte. And also this is the larger size of the Natasha Denona palette, which is why it's the more expensive version. And it is a holiday palette and it is a limited edition, but we'll see just how limited edition it is, because there's a lot of things that were limited edition like 3 years ago that are still available, so who knows. But anyways, so today I'm going to be doing 2 more looks, and I'm going to be giving you a review on this palette and just talking about my thoughts in general and if I recommend it or not. And just quickly, let's go over the 3 multichromes. So the top one is called Scarab, and that one she already has in a liquid form with her Chromium eyeshadows, which I also have done a review on and a video on. I did eye swatches, I used them, and that will be linked down below. I really enjoyed that formula. It was a really great formula. Then the other 2 shades, Kinetic and Color Flip, are technically not her liquid multichromes, but there is a shade that I will talk about later that is from her Chromium liquid multichrome eyeshadows that is pretty much the same as Color Flip, give or take. This one is very light though. And so if you're new to multichromes, I'll just give you a quick crash course in multichromes. So multichrome eyeshadows have been done a lot by indie brands. There have been a lot of loose versions, press versions, as well as some jelly versions. So this is by no means a new concept. I think most people know that at this point, even if you're new to multichromes. Multichromes usually shift at least 3 or more shades, and the way that you see the shift the best is when you're looking at it on a curve. So the curve is what helps to show the kind of color morphing from one color to another. There's also different kinds of shade shifts of multichromes, which I have a video on my channel of which ones are the most shifty, and it really depends on the types of colors that are shifting. And the best way to look at a multichrome is definitely in natural lighting or fluorescent lighting, and especially if there's 2 different light points hitting your lid from different angles and they bend in your eye as you move. The worst lighting to look at multichromes in is direct sunlight, because in general direct sunlight just washes everything out, so it really washes out the shift, and you can really mostly see just like sparkles, and you might be able to see the shift, but you definitely won't see it as well as if you're looking in a window light or just natural lighting, not in direct sunlight. Fluorescent lighting is really great too, and also just like straight on. I think a lot of times if there's different lighting hitting you from here and then here, you can see the way that it shifts. Also something that's really common depending on the type of multichrome, but usually the more deep kind of jewel tone multichromes have a black base or what it looks like to be gray when you start blending it out. So you definitely don't want to go in blending multichromes. You really just want to very lightly go in and feather the edges, but you don't want to be blending it on. You want to be packing it on. You can put them on wet with your finger, with a brush, or I usually prefer to use some kind of a tacky base that sets down, so a glitter primer, or my favorite is Fahrenheit Pixie Epoxy, which I will link down below. So you will see me using that in the tutorial section because I have oily hooded lids, and just in general eyeshadows don't like to last on my lid. So let's get into some swatch comparisons and possible dupes, and then after that I'll go straight into the 2 looks, and then at the end of the video I'll give you my final thoughts on this palette. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please keep watching. Okay, so first up we have the Kinetic shade from the Natasha Denona palette, and then also Cleona's Turret, which is one of the pastel multichromes. It is spelled T-U-R-R-E-T. It will be up on the screen. You can see these are very similar, not exactly the same. Turret is definitely lighter, but they both have like a purple to a lime green soft shift. They're not very metallic and very deep. And Kinetic, you can see it has kind of like a gray cast underneath it. So does kind of Turret, but you can see it much more in Kinetic. And I would say Kinetic's just a little bit more like a cool tone purple, while Turret looks almost a little bit more on the pinky side. Next up, we have Scarab against Cliona's Patina shade. I would say Patina's definitely much more metallic, very strong shifting. The green is just a little bit more of a lime green versus Scarab is more like a bronze green in some lighting. And you can also tell that Patina is darker. Next up is Color Flip in the center, and underneath it is Cathedral from the Cliona Pastel Multichrome collection, and then above Color Flip is Terra Moon's Head Rush. And while Terra Moon's is definitely more of a deep jeweled multichrome with a black base, it's pretty similar in tone in certain angles, and you could see that Cathedral is very light. It's almost got like a sheer base to it. And then lastly, we have Color Flip versus the Natasha Denona Chromium Liquid Eyeshadow in Ultraviolet, and these are very similar. I would say they're pretty much identical. Color Flip looks like it has much more of a gray base, and it's even more kind of dull than Ultraviolet. But if you have Ultraviolet and Scarab, then you definitely don't need this palette. First, I'm going in with Ion in the crease, and I did already prime my lid with the XX Revolution eye primer, and I'm just trying to build this up and blend it out. It does come on just a little bit sheer. I think it's just due to the nature of the shade. Then I'm going to create a wing with the shade Scrap, and I'm just packing that on and using the shape of the brush to help me out with creating the shape, and just kind of going back and forth. Then I'm going to go in with the Fahrenheit Pixie Epoxy on my lid, and I'm going to tap it out just to make sure that I didn't put on too much, and just blend out the edges a little bit so I don't get any harsh lines once I put on the Multichrome. And the Multichrome I'm packing on is Scarab. And then I take a really small blending brush and just feather out the edges. And then I also use Scrap to connect the lower lash line to the wing. Then also layering Ion underneath that. And I popped on the ColourPop Dame Lashes, and this is the first finished look. I think the first row really goes well with the Scarab Multichrome, as you can see. And I'm going to be putting this all over the lid, but first I want to make sure that it's all blended out in the crease before I do that. And as you can see, this shade, even just trying to pack it on, it ended up being a very light wash of color on my skin tone. And then again, going in with Fahrenheit Pixie Epoxy on the lid and tapping it out. Next, I pack on Color Flip, and I was really shocked how gray it looked against Diatonic. It kind of makes me wonder if Diatonic would have been better if it was a little bit more cool toned. I wasn't honestly a fan of the way that this look came out. I think the grayness of the shade just really dulls it out. And then underneath my lower lash line, I'm going in with Diatonic, and I'm also packing on a little bit of Color Flip and connecting it with the outer edge of my eye. And I popped on the ColourPop Dame lashes, and this is the second finished look. And I lowered the lighting just so you can see the flip a little bit better, and you can really see that gray cast, and I just really don't like this with Diatonic. I think this shade would have been better if I just used like tungsten in the crease. It's much more of like a cool lavender, which I think would have been better to blend this shade into. So for my final thoughts on this palette, I knew going in that I would love the mattes. I love Natasha Denona mattes in general. It's one of my favorite formulas. It was really the Multichromes I was excited about because I really was curious to see how Natasha Denona would do her take on them. There's a lot of different kinds of Multichromes. There's ones that have a black base. There are more that are iridescent, that don't have any kind of base. And then there's also Multichromes that don't have a black base. They're just a little bit sheer, but they're still pretty bright. And I kind of had a feeling, given the Natasha Denona consumer base and just kind of the aesthetic of her brand, that these would not be anything like the more indie, super jeweled, very metallic Multichromes. I think I was expecting very much something similar to the Multichrome in the Pat McGrath Divine Rose 2 palette, which is very, very soft on the lid, also not anywhere near as pigmented and as metallic as you see with indie brands. So if you're a huge fan of indie brands and you already have a lot or a few Multichromes from indie brands, I do not think that this palette is for you. I do not think that you will be impressed by these at all. And you can see in the looks that I created that they're very, very soft. And as you saw, one of the shades, Kinetic, was very similar to the pastel Multichromes from Cliona, which those are very, very subtle. So if you have that and that's what you like, you might like this palette. But just overall, I think you will be disappointed in these unless you absolutely want the mattes in here. And so while we're talking about the mattes, I do want to point out something that just really bothered me once I got this palette and started playing with it, is that there's not much depth. This is very much like a pastel palette. I think it's supposed to be much more like wearable, easy to just throw on. So this is supposed to be much softer, much more like everyday. The really only one deep shade is this green shade, and then the purple is kind of deep, but I think that each row should have had like a very, very deepening up shade. I really could have done without like this shade over here and then this shade over here. It's just too much. And then also one of these, and then like one of these. So hard to point. I just feel like this is very much on the light side, and it just really could have been kicked up a notch with some deeper shades. And on both sides, I do really enjoy the very deep jeweled Multichromes, but I also do appreciate some of the more subtle shades, and I understand it's just not everybody's cup of tea. And so I've been seeing a lot of people compare these to indie brands and just saying that these are nowhere near as good, but that's really a matter of personal preference. Just like Cliona has some shades that are similar to this type of effect where they're very subtle, the pastel Multichromes, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're worse or they're any better. It's just really a preference, and you know, whatever your kind of mood is that day. If you don't want to wear something that's very smoky and you want to go in with a Multichrome that's a little bit just more subtle, so I would only recommend this to people who don't have any Multichromes or that do like to switch it up between some of the more deep Multichromes and softer Multichromes as well. And also if you really enjoy the Natasha Denona matte formula, and also if these are just your kind of tones and you like to do these kinds of looks every day, then I think this palette would be for you. But overall, I just want to recommend it to everyone. I really think that this is just for specific kinds of people that are looking for this kind of palette. I don't think this palette is for everyone. And if you're looking for much more vibrant, much more metallic Multichromes that you don't mind have a black base, then definitely check out some indie brands. I will link them down below. I also have a ton of videos of eye swatches of different Multichromes from different indie brands. And so I will leave up my Multichrome Monday playlist up on the screen in case you want to keep watching. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.